The last memory of a human. The sky of Vylora was always gray. Cold winds moved across the broken land. The war had ended 20 years ago, but the planet still looked like it was fighting. Broken towers, burned homes, empty streets, and one rule everywhere: no humans allowed. Leora sat inside a rusted cargo ship that was half buried in the sand. She pulled an old blanket over her shoulders. Her blue skin looked pale. Her silver eyes were tired. She was not just cold. She was afraid. Her hand rested on her round belly. She whispered softly, "It's okay. I'm still here. I won't let them hurt you." The baby kicked inside her. No one knew she was pregnant, and no one knew the truth about the baby. It wasn't a full alien. It was half human. And in this world, that was a death sentence. Leora reached inside a small bag and took out a photo. It was worn and faded. A man smiled from the picture. Human. Brown hair, kind eyes, strong face. His name was Ace. He was a human soldier who came to Vylora during the war. But he didn't bring hate. He brought medicine. He saved lives. He saved her. Leora remembered the first time she met him. She had been injured, hiding under rubble. Everyone else had run, but Jace stayed. He pulled her out, carried her to safety, and when she opened her eyes, he smiled. "You're safe now," he had said. She fell in love with that smile. But love between alien and human was forbidden. When the war ended, humans were forced to leave. Jace tried to stay. He begged. He fought. But the alien council said no. He kissed her one last time and said, "If anything happens, protect our child." Then he was gone. Leora never heard from him again. People said he died in a rebel attack. Others said he was taken by the human army. No one knew the truth, and Leora stopped asking, because asking questions meant danger. She looked at the photo again. A tear dropped on Jace's face. Suddenly, a loud siren rang in the distance. Red lights flashed across the scrapyard. Leora's heart jumped. "Patrol," she whispered. "They're searching." She stood up slowly and grabbed a dark cloak. She wrapped it tightly around her belly, hiding the shape. She peeked through a crack in the ship. 2 alien soldiers walked by. Their armor was black. Their weapons were ready. One of them looked around and shouted, "Scan every area." The council received a tip. A traitor may be hiding here. Possibly. Hybrid. Leora's hands shook. Hybrid. That word meant her. Her baby. The mix of 2 bloods. Human and alien. A child of love, now seen as a threat. She held her breath as the soldiers came closer. One of them stopped right outside the ship. He looked down, then up. Leora pressed herself against the wall. She didn't move. She didn't breathe. The soldier stepped forward. And then, a voice called out from another side of the yard. "I found something. Over here." The soldier turned and ran toward the voice. Leora dropped to her knees. Her hands shook. Her heart raced. That was too close. She stayed inside the broken ship until the sirens faded away. Then, slowly, she sat down again. Her body ached. She was tired, scared, but she wasn't giving up. She took a deep breath and whispered to her baby, "We're not safe here anymore." She opened a small metal box. Inside it was a broken communicator. It was old, scratched, and dead. But she had kept it because it once held Jace's voice. Suddenly, the screen blinked. One message recovered. Her eyes widened. She pressed the button. Jace's voice came through. Static, broken, but real. "Leora, if you're hearing this, it means you're still alive. And maybe, so is our child. I couldn't stay. They didn't let me. But I left something for you. Sector D47. I built a safe place. Go there. You'll find answers. You'll find help." The message cut off. Leora stared at the screen. Her heart was racing again, but this time with hope. Sector D47. That was far. Dangerous. But maybe it was the only chance for her and the baby. She packed her bag. Food, water, photo, and the communicator. Then she stood up. Her belly moved. The baby kicked again. Lyora placed her hand on it and said softly, "Don't worry, little one. We're going to find your father's last gift. We're going to survive." She stepped out of the ship. The wind blew stronger now, but her steps were firm. Behind her, the night was full of danger. Ahead of her, the path was unknown, but she walked anyway. Because love had not died with the war, the child they must never see. Lyora walked through the dead lands of Vailora under a heavy sky. The air was sharp and dry. Every few steps, she stopped to rest. The weight of her belly slowed her down. Her boots pressed deep into the gray dust, leaving tracks that the wind tried to erase. She was headed to Sector D47, a place Jace mentioned in his old message. She didn't know what she would find there. A safe house, a weapon, a memory, maybe nothing, but it was all she had. All night she walked. She didn't use lights. Patrol drones searched from above, scanning the ground for heat signatures. Anyone found outside at night was questioned. Anyone pregnant was scanned. And if they found human DNA, they would terminate the baby on the spot. No trials. No mercy. She reached the edge of an old town called Telmor. It had once been a busy trading post during the war. Now it was silent. Burned. Bones of buildings reached into the sky like the fingers of the dead. She moved quickly through the shadows. At the center of the town stood a rusted food depot. It was abandoned, but sometimes wanderers left supplies hidden there. She crept inside. It was quiet, too quiet. She walked past old metal shelves, brushing away thick webs. She found a half-rotten fruit and a sealed water pack. Her hands trembled as she drank. Her baby kicked again, reminding her she was not alone. But just as she sat to rest, "Halt! Show your identity," a robotic voice echoed. She froze. A patrol bot hovered near the entrance. Its eye glowed red. It scanned the room and zoomed in on her. Female. Age, 24. Energy level unstable. Possible illness. Proceeding with biological scan. "No," she whispered and backed away. The scanner began to glow blue. If it read her DNA, it would find the truth. She had seconds. She grabbed a broken metal pole and swung it at the bot's eye. Crack. Sparks flew. The bot twitched, made a loud buzzing noise, then fell to the floor. Dead. But she knew the noise would bring others. She ran. Out the back. Through the alleys. Over broken fences. And when she reached the hills outside the town, she dropped to the ground, panting, her hands holding her belly. That was too close. She couldn't survive many more of those. Just as she was about to get up, she heard a voice behind her. "Why are you running, Blue One?" She turned sharply. It was a child. A young alien boy, maybe 6 years old, standing beside a stone pillar. His skin was greenish-gray, and his eyes were wide. He stared at her belly. "You're gonna have a baby," he said, "but it looks strange." Lyora's heart jumped. "You should go home, child." He tilted his head. "My mother says some babies are cursed. She says they don't belong. She says they come from humans." Lyora froze. "Is your baby one of them?" Her eyes filled with fear, but she managed a small smile. "No, little one. I'm just tired. That's all." The boy stared for a moment longer, then turned and walked away. But before he disappeared, he said, "The patrol is near. I saw their lights. If they find you, they'll take you." She stood there, heart racing. Even children knew the rules. She had to leave. Now. But as she turned, a beep came from her bag. The communicator, Jace's device. She pulled it out. The screen blinked again. Another message. No, it was coordinates. A beacon had activated. A faint signal was guiding her. The path changed. She followed it, through the rocks, across a dried-up river, into a small cave system. There, hidden behind a cracked wall, was a stairwell. She took a deep breath and stepped down. The air grew warmer. The sound of machines hummed in the dark. At the bottom, a door opened automatically. "Welcome, Leora," she gasped. The voice was human, calm, female. Inside the room was light, screens, tools, medical beds, and a soft humming sound. On one wall was a holo image, Jace, smiling. She stepped forward in tears. "Jace, you really built this." A screen lit up. An eye appeared. "This station was created by Captain Jace Thorne before he left Valora. You are registered as his mate. This station will protect you and your child." Leora cried as she looked around. She had been hunted, feared, and alone. But here, in this secret place, she felt Jace's love again. Suddenly, a warning flashed. Heartbeat irregular. Child stress level rising. Immediate care required. Leora grabbed her belly. Pain shot through her side. The AI moved a robotic arm and scanned her. "Child is strong, but will not survive long without support." Leora whispered, "Please, help us." The AI replied, "Then we must begin. And there is one more message from Jace. Would you like to hear it?" She nodded, crying. The screen blinked again. Jace's voice returned, gentle, strong, loving. "Leora, I knew they'd come for you. But if you made it here, it means you're stronger than all of them. You're not alone. You never were. Our child, our future, is worth everything." The message faded. Leora placed her hand on her stomach and whispered, "We'll make it. For you. For him. For the child they must never see." But someone was watching. Far above, outside the cave, a drone recorded everything and silently sent the footage to the Alien Council. Jace's secret safe house. Leora sat on a medical chair inside the hidden underground station. Warm yellow lights glowed softly from the ceiling. Her skin looked better now. Her breathing was calm. The pain in her side was gone, but her heart was still heavy. She placed her hand on her stomach. The baby moved gently. She smiled. "You're safe, for now," she whispered. The AI voice returned. "Vitals stable. Stress levels dropping. The child is strong." Leora looked around. This was more than just a shelter. It was a home built in secret by Jace. Everything in the room had his touch. Simple, clean, ready. There were food supplies, warm clothes, water systems, and even soft music playing in the background. A small box in the corner had personal items, books, pictures, even a scarf that still smelled faintly of him. On the wall was a large screen with blinking lights. "Do you wish to open Jace's final message?" She nodded slowly. The screen flickered. Then Jace appeared. His face was tired, but full of hope. "Leora, if you made it here, that means you're still alive. And maybe, so is our child." She held her breath. "I built this place in secret. After the council gave the final order, no humans, no half-bloods, I knew they would come for us. For you. So I hid this station. Just for you. For our baby." Tears ran down Leora's face. Jace continued, "I don't know if I'll survive the war. I don't know if I'll ever see you again. But if you're watching this, I want you to promise me something." He leaned closer to the camera. "Protect our child, no matter what. Because one day, this child might be the key to peace, to understanding, to ending all this hate." The screen faded. Leora stood silently. Her hands shook. Then she whispered, "I promise." Suddenly, the alarm beeped. Red lights flashed. The AI voice turned sharp. "Warning. Drone surveillance detected. Location may be compromised. Lyora's heart dropped. No, 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 no. She grabbed the communicator, packed a bag with food and medical items, and turned to leave. But the AI stopped her. Wait, there is one more file. Jace left it locked. It required your voice to open. Now it's ready. The screen opened a new message, but this one was different. It showed a map, a secret transport path, a tunnel that led far outside the city walls. And at the end was a blinking mark, Haven Point, a secret place where ex-soldiers, rebels, and forgotten people lived. Hidden from the council. Some even said humans still lived there. Lyora stared at it. Could it be real? Was this the place where Jace wanted her to go? Before she could think, an explosion shook the ground. Dust fell from the ceiling. The AI shouted. Breached. Multiple hostiles entering cave mouth. Lyora ran to the back door of the safe house. She placed her hand on the scanner. It opened to a long dark tunnel. She looked back once. The station behind her was shaking. Smoke was rising. Thank you, Jace, she whispered. Then she ran. The council's move. At the same time, far away in a tower of black glass, the alien council watched the drone footage. Old leaders in long robes sat at a round table. One of them, General Threx, slammed his fist. She's alive, and she's carrying it. The human seed. A female counselor whispered. We told them this would happen. Now the people will panic. Threx growled. This child, this thing, must not be born. They sent a kill order. Every drone, every scout, every patrol, assigned to one mission. Terminate the hybrid. Terminate the mother. The escape. Lyora ran for hours through the tunnel. It was dark and wet. The walls dripped water. Her feet hurt. Her legs ached. But she kept going. At last, she found a broken hatch. She pushed it open and crawled into the light. She was now outside the city limits, beyond the scanners. For now, unseen. Ahead, far in the distance, she saw mountains, and behind the mountains was Haven Point. She walked toward it. But as she moved, she didn't know. A shadow was following her, a figure in armor. Someone with a scar on his face and glowing yellow eyes. Someone who had once fought beside Jace. Now working for the council. He whispered into his radio. I found her, and the child is still alive. Hunted by her own people. The desert night was colder than usual. Lyora wrapped her cloak tightly around her. Tiny sparks still danced in the sky above her. Leftovers from the explosion that had destroyed Jace's safe house. She didn't look back. She couldn't. Every step she took now was for her baby, and for the memory of the man who gave his life for both of them. She crossed hills of broken metal and deep craters left behind from the war. Her boots were torn. Her body was tired. But her mind, it stayed sharp, focused. She knew they were coming. The council had seen the footage. They would send hunters. Not just machines, but people she once knew. Aliens like her. Her own kind. Her own people. She was now their enemy. A face from the past. Hours later, the sky turned red with sunrise. She reached an old water station. It had been dry for years, but she knew it had a hidden compartment underground, a spot she and Jace used long ago when they first fell in love. She climbed inside the ruined dome and pulled open the floor plate. There, she found an old scanner, offline. Wires, cables, a broken solar charger. She sat down and sighed. Her legs were shaking. Then, suddenly, Lyora. Her eyes went wide. That voice. Familiar. Male. Deep. She turned sharply. There he stood. Commander Sale. Her old mentor. Her childhood friend. The one who had trained her in survival and scouting. But his eyes were different now. Cold. His armor had the council's mark. He held a weapon in his hand. Loaded. Ready. It really is you, he said, stepping closer. I didn't believe it when they said you were alive, let alone pregnant. She stood up slowly. Please, Sale, you don't understand. No, I understand perfectly, he said with a forced smile. You broke our law. You loved a human. You carry his child. You betrayed our race. Her hands went protectively over her belly. It's not a betrayal. It's life. It's love. It's a threat, he growled. That child has no place in this world. She stepped back. You used to believe in peace. You said war was a curse on all of us. Sale looked at her, silent. Then he whispered, the council showed us what the child could become. A mix of two species. Uncontrolled. Dangerous. Lyra's voice rose. Or maybe a bridge. A new beginning. Sale shook his head. I have my orders. He raised his weapon. Then he hesitated. His hand shook. Leave now, he said quietly. Run. I didn't see you. This never happened. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. Why? Because you're the only one who ever believed I could be more than a soldier, he whispered. She turned and ran. Sale watched her disappear into the dunes. Then he spoke into his comm. No sign of the target. Tracks are cold. Moving to next sector. He shut it off and stood alone, eyes full of pain. The council's anger. Inside the council tower, General Threx slammed his fist on the table. The hunter failed. She escaped. The female counselor leaned forward. Then we must send the shadow units. But they're not ready. They're born for this. Made for this. No mercy. No emotion. Let them hunt her down. The order was sent. Signs of a gift. That night, Leora took shelter inside a collapsed satellite dish. She laid on cold metal and stared at the stars. She pulled out Jace's photo and whispered, I saw Sale. He let me go. But next time, they won't. Suddenly, her belly glowed again. She gasped. But this time, it didn't fade away. The light moved like tiny stars inside her skin. It spread to her chest, her hands, and her child moved. Fast, strong. A wave of energy pushed out from her body. The old wires and broken devices in the shelter lit up. Power. From nothing. What is this? She whispered. The AI voice from her communicator activated again, confused. Unusual biological event detected. The child's neural activity is off the charts. She held her belly, eyes wide. Her baby wasn't just a hybrid. It was something new, something powerful. Kale enters. The next morning, a new figure followed her tracks. Tall, hooded, scared, wounded. His name was Kale. A half-blood rebel. His father had been human. His mother, alien. He had lived in hiding his whole life, hunted by both sides. But he had heard the rumors. A full-blood alien female, pregnant with a human's child. If it was true, she would need help. He found a piece of her torn cloak on a thorn bush. He smiled. I'm coming, sister. The shadow unit arrives. At the same time, the first shadow hunter stepped onto the sand. His body was built in a lab. No name, no face, no heart. Only one command in his brain. Find the hybrid. Terminate. 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 The rebel who still believes in humans. Leora ran. The black-cloaked figure, a shadow hunter, chased her across the rocks like death with legs. His body made no sound. His feet didn't crunch the gravel. His cloak didn't flap in the wind. He moved like a shadow, cold and quiet. A weapon glowed red in his hand. It was built to erase life, not leave wounds. Lyra's breath came hard and fast. She felt the burn in her chest, the fire in her legs. Her belly pulled her down with every step. But she kept running. Because if she stopped, it was over. The shadow hunter raised his weapon and fired. A red beam flew past her, burning the rock beside her. She screamed and ducked. The blast had missed her by inches. The smell of burnt stone filled the air. She dove behind a sharp ridge and pressed her body to the rock. Her baby kicked wildly inside her. "Sha, it's okay. I'm here. I'm here." She looked up. The shadow hunter was walking closer now. Slow, sure. He didn't rush. He didn't need to. He knew she had nowhere to run. But then, suddenly, another sound broke through the air. "Hey!" A large rock smashed into the hunter's head from the side. He stumbled back. Another voice shouted, "You want someone to fight? Fight me, monster." A figure jumped down from the rocks above. His long brown cloak flew behind him as he landed. He stood tall and strong between Lyora and the hunter. Kale. His skin was darker than most aliens. His eyes were green. One hand held a metal staff. His other arm was a cybernetic limb, built from old human tech and alien scraps. The shadow hunter paused. Kale twirled the staff and grinned. "Didn't expect company, huh?" The hunter raised his weapon. Kale slammed his staff into the ground. A wave of electric energy shot out. The sand sparked. The rocks trembled. Lyora covered her head. When she looked again, the shadow hunter was gone, vanished into the dust storm. Kale turned and reached for her. "Come on. We don't have much time." The cave. Kale took her into a cave hidden behind thick vines. Inside, it was warm and dry. The walls were covered in drawings, symbols from both human and alien languages. A small fire glowed at the center. Steam rose from a pot of soup. Lyora sat, gasping for air. Her belly throbbed. Kale knelt beside her. "You're lucky I was watching the skies. Saw the drone. Saw the explosion. Figured someone needed saving." She stared at him, unsure. "Who are you?" Kale smiled. "Name's Kale. I'm like you." He held up his cybernetic arm. "Half alien, half something else. Human tech saved me. Human blood runs in me. I've been hunted since birth." Lyora blinked. "You're a hybrid." He nodded. "And you're carrying the next one." She gasped. "How do you know?" "I saw it," Kale said gently. "In your eyes. In your walk. In the way you protected your belly from that shadow freak." She looked away, ashamed. "They say my child is cursed." Kale leaned forward. "They're wrong. That child could be the future. Jace's legacy." Kale opened his pack and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. He unwrapped it slowly. It was a metal tag. A soldier's ID. The name read, Jace Thorne. Lyora reached for it with shaking hands. "Where did you get this?" Kale's voice softened. "He saved me once. During the war. I was just a street thief. I stole from both sides. But Jace, he didn't kill me. He gave me food, water. He looked me in the eyes and said, 'No one's born evil.'" He looked at Lyora. "I've been searching for you. I heard rumors of a woman carrying his child. Now I know it's true." Tears ran down her face. She held the tag close to her heart. "I thought I was alone," she whispered. Kale nodded. "You're not." The baby's first power. That night, while Lyora slept, the fire burned low. Kale sat on guard, polishing his weapon. Suddenly, a soft glow came from her body. He looked over. Her baby was moving again. But not just moving, glowing. The walls of the cave lit up faintly. Kale's cybernetic arm began to hum. "What the?" He stood and scanned her with an old human reader. The results shocked him. "This isn't just a hybrid," he whispered. "This is something more." Suddenly, the fire burst upward, just for a second, and then calmed. Kale stared at the child inside her with awe. "Jace, what did you create?" Council's response. In the high city, General Threx watched the shadow hunter's broken footage. He saw Kale's face. He growled. "Of course, the half-breed rebel. I want both of them taken alive, or in pieces. The female counselor raised her hand. We can't keep this hidden much longer. The people are asking questions. Rumors of the hybrid are spreading. Threx stared at the hologram of the glowing child and hissed. Then let fear answer them. Born in the fire, the sky over the valley was dark with storm clouds. Far below, hidden between broken hills and metal ruins, Lyora and Kale were preparing to move. The path to Haven Point was still long, but hope had returned to their hearts. For the first time in weeks, Lyora smiled as she touched her belly. You'll see the sunrise, she whispered, and I'll still be holding you. Kale packed weapons, water, and the last of their food. His eyes stayed sharp. His instincts screamed that danger was close. We should leave now, he said, but it was already too late. The ambush. From the cliffs above, 5 shadow hunters dropped silently from the sky like demons. They moved fast. No talking. No emotion. Only one mission. Kill the hybrid, or take it before it's born. The first blast hit the ground near Kale's feet. Boom. Sand exploded. Kale dove forward, grabbing Lyora by the arm. Move. Lyora cried out, holding her belly. Cal, it's happening. The baby, I can feel it. It's coming. Cal's heart raced. Now. She nodded, her face pale and sweating. I can't run anymore. He looked around and spotted a broken bunker nearby, half buried in the ground. Hold on, he yelled. He picked her up and ran. Behind them, the shadow hunters closed in, weapons glowing. One of them aimed at Lyora's back. He fired. But the blast hit a rock wall and missed, barely. Inside the bunker, Kale placed Lyora down and sealed the door. The walls shook as more blasts hit outside. Lyora screamed. Her body twisted in pain. Kale, it's happening. Now. The birth. Inside the bunker, lights flickered. Dust fell from the ceiling. Alarms blinked. Outside, the ground shook under heavy footsteps. Kale knelt beside Lyora. I'm not a doctor, he said. She screamed again. He held her hand tight. You don't have to be, she gasped. Just don't leave me. He stayed. Through the pain. Through the screams. And then, a cry. A small, soft, powerful cry. A newborn's voice echoed in the room. Lyora sobbed as she held her baby in her arms for the first time. The child glowed softly with blue and golden light. Its skin was smooth, with gentle alien lines. But its eyes, they were human. Big, brown, warm, just like Jace. Kale stared, speechless. His metal arm trembled. He's beautiful, he whispered. The child opened its eyes and looked directly at him. And for a second, Kale felt something deep in his chest. Peace. All fear, gone. All noise, silent. Just peace. The attack. But outside the bunker, peace had no place. The shadow hunters broke through the outer wall. Their weapons hummed with deadly light. Kale stood between them and the mother and child. He raised his staff. You're not taking them. One of the hunters replied in a flat voice. You were warned. Half-blood. Stand aside or die. Kale smiled. Then I'll die standing. They charge. The fight began. Kale struck first, his staff hitting one in the chest, sending sparks flying. He moved like fire, fast, angry, full of purpose. But they were many. Too many. A blast hit his side. He fell. Blood poured from his arm. Lyora screamed. The baby cried louder. The bunker's walls shook. And then something impossible happened. The child's power awakens. The baby's cry grew sharper, stronger. It turned into a deep, vibrating sound. The air around the child shimmered. Suddenly, every light in the bunker turned white-hot. Weapons jammed. Armor cracked. The shadow hunters stumbled, grabbing their heads. System failure, mind overload, abort. One by one, they fell to their knees. Lyora held her baby, eyes wide. What's happening? Cale gasped from the ground. It's him, the child. He's stopping them. The last shadow hunter tried to raise his weapon. The baby looked at him. The light grew brighter, and the weapon melted in his hand. He ran. The others followed. Gone. Silence returned. Only the soft breathing of mother, child, and wounded rebel filled the room. A quiet moment. Lyora cradled her baby and rocked slowly. Tears ran down her cheeks. You saved us, she whispered. Cale sat beside her, pressing his hand to his bleeding side. I've seen many things in this galaxy, but nothing like that. Lyora smiled, though her eyes were still wet. He's more than a baby. He's a message. Cale nodded. He's the proof. Proof of what? Cale looked her in the eyes. That love can create power. That peace is possible. That maybe, just maybe, we don't have to be enemies forever. Back at the council. In the tower of the High Council, panic spread. General Threx threw a table across the room. The hunters failed. The lead scientist spoke calmly. We underestimated the child. It affected machines. And minds. Possibly energy fields. The female counselor whispered, what if the child isn't a threat? Threx turned on her. Then you are. He stormed out. Hope with human eyes. The wind over Haven Point was soft. It moved across the land like a song, gentle, calm, and full of memory. Below the hill where Lyora stood, hundreds of lights flickered across the hidden camp. These were homes of rebels, outcasts, lost soldiers, and forgotten races, people who had no place in the cities above. And now, they were looking up. At her. At the woman who had escaped death. At the child who should not exist, but did. Lyora stepped forward, her baby wrapped close to her chest. His tiny hands peeked out from the blanket. His brown eyes, so human, so full of light, watched everything. Cale stood beside her, bandaged, tired, but proud. They're waiting, he said softly. Lyora nodded. She took a deep breath and walked into the heart of Haven Point. The camp of the forgotten. The people of Haven Point were quiet as she passed. Some looked with fear, some with wonder, some fell to their knees and wept. A child asked, "Is that the hybrid baby?" A woman whispered, "They say it glowed like fire and melted weapons with its eyes." Cale called out to the crowd, "This child is not a monster. He is not a curse. He is the future." An old man stepped forward. His face was marked with burns from the war. His voice shook. "I saw what war did to my people. I saw what humans did. But when I look at that baby," his eyes filled with tears, "I see peace." Lyora spoke next. Her voice was calm but strong. "I loved a human. His name was Ace. He saved me when the world wanted me dead. He believed love was stronger than hate. And now, his child lives." She held the baby higher. "He carries both our blood, both our pain, and maybe both our hopes." Silence. Then clapping. Then cheers. The camp lit up with light and sound. For the first time in years, there was joy. But far above, danger still watched. The council's final move. General Threx stood before a massive screen in the council tower. He watched the celebration at Haven Point. "They cheer for a lie," he growled. The other councilors stood in silence. Threx turned and pressed a button. A red alarm began to sound. "If they want to believe in a hybrid god, we'll remind them who rules this galaxy." He launched Operation Cleansing. 12 airships rose from the sky, filled with drones, soldiers, and explosives, heading straight for Haven Point. "Burn it down," Threx said coldly, "and bring me the child." The vision. Back in Haven Point, as people danced, The baby suddenly opened his eyes wide. He stopped crying, stopped moving. And then he spoke, not with words, but with thought. Everyone in the camp heard it, in their minds, in their hearts. The fire is coming, but I am not afraid. You don't have to fight. You only have to choose. Leora gasped. Her mind felt warm, full of stars. Cale dropped to one knee, holding his head. He's speaking to us. The baby glowed. Light rose around him like a flame that did not burn. His eyes were calm, wise, ancient, and he lifted his tiny hand toward the sky. The moment of truth. The airships arrived. 12 massive machines. Weapons armed. Soldiers ready. They hovered over Haven Point. General Threx's voice boomed from speakers. "Give us the child, or we will destroy everything." People panicked. Some ran. Some screamed. Others looked to Leora. She held the child high. "We will not surrender. We will not be afraid." Suddenly, the baby let out a soft sound. A hum. A vibration. And everything stopped. The ships froze in midair. The weapons powered down. Even Threx's voice turned to static. The people below stared up. One by one, the airships turned and flew away. No violence. No death. Just peace. The fall of the council. Back in the tower, screens went dark. Threx screamed in rage. "What kind of child is this?" The female counselor stepped forward. "The kind we should have welcomed, not hunted." She turned to the others. "It's time for new voices." Guards moved forward and placed Threx in chains. "You led with fear," she said. "Now we follow hope." Years later, the galaxy changed. Borders opened. Laws were rewritten. Humans and aliens spoke again. Trade, music, ideas, love. And in the heart of the galaxy stood a statue. A woman, a man, and their child. The plaque read, "Jace, Leora, and the child with human eyes." Proof that love is stronger than war.